Hello, everybody, and welcome back to CyberTalk. I hope you enjoyed episode 3 where I interviewed David Linthicum, the Chief Cloud Strategy Officer for Deloitte Consulting. And today we have an awesome guest. And really, I think all of my guests are awesome. Maybe that's not fair. But this one is near and dear to my heart for many reasons. So, Lonnie Snyder is the Chief Information Officer of the 2022 Special Olympics USA Games. And I gave you that big long title for a really specific reason. And that's one of the things that Lonnie and I are going to talk about today. But, Lonnie, thank you so much for being on CyberTalk today. Yeah.
Oh, thanks for
So,
having me.
for our viewing and
Good to be
listening
here.
audience, I got to work with Lonnie on a technology project about 6 years ago, and I'll leave it there because I don't want to spill any secret sauce of the things that I've done with my clients. But at the time, he was working for Special Olympics, the headquarters in Washington, D.C. And Lonnie, I thought it would be fun if you just took a couple minutes to help our audience understand that Special Olympics is a brand and it is multiple companies, and you happen to be leading the technology for one of those distinct companies now. So why don't you take a couple minutes and share that with the audience, please?
Sure. So Special Olympics happens every day all around the world. So I used to work for 8 years for Special Olympics International, based in Washington, D.C. That's broken into 7 regions around the world. So North America, where we're in, has 52 separate 501c3s that are all Special Olympics. So Special Olympics Florida, where I now live, is a separate legal organization from Special Olympics Virginia, where I used to live, from Washington, D.C., et cetera. Every 4 years, the United States comes together to do a regional games. So I'm now with the CIO for the 2022 Special Olympics USA Games. And we next month, less than 30 days, are going to be hosting over 5,500 people from around the country and the Caribbean. So 64 delegations from every U.S. state and 12 foreign countries will come here to Orlando to participate in 19 sports. So we're right at 4,000 athletes. It's going to be pretty spectacular. There's some amazing venues. People are going to have the time of their lives. Disney is our host, so all the athletes will also get to go to Disney, which is pretty cool. So yeah, there's a lot of really exciting stuff happening. Pre-COVID, Special Olympics happened about
Mm-hmm.
108,000 times around the world, right? And operate in 201 countries and territories. So it's a really big global organization, and I'm just one small part of it here in
Yeah,
North
and for
America.
our viewing and listening audience, I got to participate in the local Special Olympics just a couple of weeks ago. So I don't think I've shared this with this audience yet. I have a 17-year-old son with autism, and he's been doing the annual spring Special Olympics here in Carroll County, Maryland, where I live. Gosh, for as long as I can remember now, and it's the spirit, it's the camaraderie of what happens here locally that your organization has embraced nationally, and I just think it's a whole lot of fun. So there's a lot of interesting things for your role as a CIO, at least from my perspective. One, you're a nonprofit, so there's unique challenges in managing technologies for a nonprofit. You're a very well known brand, and I know that that puts a different emphasis on how your organization operates. You have a board of directors and it's high profile people, candidly. And they sometimes call shots and you're like, okay, I got to deal with this. And you're coordinating a major event. So you have physical offices, you have virtual employees, you have this pop-up event it's not quite that simple, that's downplaying it, but you have this event that you're doing in somebody else's facility that, from a technology standpoint, from a security standpoint, there's so many things going on there. Where do you start, Lonnie? What's the first bite of the elephant that you take?
Well, I've got pictures on my desk of my little kids. So this is my why. So every day that things get really crazy or busy, I just have to stop and think about who we're doing this for. So my wife and I have adopted 3 children with special needs, two kids with Down syndrome, and Christmas Day a few months ago, we brought home our daughter from Taiwan who has
Oh wow.
cerebral palsy. So thinking about, how do you help make the world a better place, and being a difference maker, and it starts at home and helping people. So you have to remember the why when you're thinking about how big and crazy and complex an event can be. Um, so we have a pretty big, crazy operation, and as you mentioned, as a nonprofit, we've got very small budgets. So you get creative and you get passionate and you talk to people about the project and what you want to do and ask them for help, right? So we're building a first ever fan engagement platform for our event. It's never been done before in Special Olympics history. So you'll be able to find, follow, cheer on athletes, customize, personalized schedules. So I wanted, every guest to feel like a very important person, not just the people that come as honored guests or VVIPs that get a special red carpet treatment. I wanted you as a parent to be able to come and support your child and to be able to find and follow and see their schedule. I wanted you to be able to celebrate when they got their notifications. So we're doing push notifications when the results are in, medals, placements, all of that good stuff. So um, we wanted to do something very different that was ambitious and bold and it had never been done before, and we're actually executing, which is pretty cool. But with regards to your other question about the venues and where do you start, it all starts with what are you trying to do, right? And getting to the heart of the requirements. So we are running a very complex operation. ESPN's Wide World of Sports will be our biggest venue, so that's hosting 9 sports. The facility is almost 300 acres. It's a huge property. And when I first walked that with our CEO, I went, "Oh my gosh, like why didn't you bid for the World Games?" Right? So people don't realize that the bid process for an event is similar to the Olympics. So a host country or state, in our case, bids to host a major event, puts together a bid package, and then Special Olympics International reviews, and the bid was awarded to Special Olympics Florida. And then a separate 501c3, a separate nonprofit was spun up to host the games. Just so there's some independence. Florida is still closely involved with the games, but we've hired a team that's doing the bulk of the work to execute it. And then there's some financial sort of independence as well. So just for security reasons, for financial reasons, if we didn't raise all of our budget, which we have, thanks to awesome partners, um, Florida wouldn't be stuck with the bill kind of thing. So really just, I think it depends. So we've got 19 sports, we've got almost 30 special events that are non-sport events. We're doing healthy athletes, which most people don't know. Special Olympics is the world's largest public health provider for people with intellectual disabilities. So we'll be doing screenings in 7 different disciplines. Seattle, in 2018, the last USA Games did 7,000 exams. We're on track to do 12,000. So it's pretty cool. There's just a lot of stuff going on. But it all starts with the requirements and what are you trying to do and streamlining a way to make it easy for people to capture those and then reviewing them and having negotiations and ultimately figuring
Hmm.
out what do you need at what venue, how many of this, how many widgets. You know, MSI has become a partner. They've loaned us 235 computers to run the event. We're renting 260 iPads. Visible just signed on as a partner. They're not on our website, but the deal got inked yesterday. They're providing 700 phones so we've got about 640 people in the delegation that are coming that don't have a smartphone, so they'll be able to be issued a device and actually interact with the Games app and have people cheer them on and still be able to participate, which is pretty cool. And afterwards, all of those devices will get given out to Special Olympics programs. So we're going to touch and manage over a
No big deal.
thousand devices, not not peripherals, right? And it's myself, an IT manager, and about 100 volunteers. So it's a really complex, big thing, and I have a fraction of a team. Like I had 7 people in my last job when I worked for Special Olympics International. Got 3% of the budget that I had before. So again, you're figuring out how to be passionate and talk about a project and ask people for help. So we've been pretty successful in getting folks to help us and partnering with our Games app, with just the facilities charges for ESPN. Normally, I received one quote for $230,000 just for IT telecom, for bandwidth and setting everything up. And that was from another third party. Disney came in with a very, very, very good discount. So, you know, it's partners just helping out. So
Yeah,
it's the only way to
I
be successful.
I want to go back to a word that you used several times at the beginning of that, which is requirements. So, well, my salesman ear heard was there's going to be a retail element to this event. So PCI becomes part of the conversation. There is a medical component to this, a significant one. So HIPAA becomes a component to this. I didn't hear. It's mostly North America, so we're not talking about Europe, correct?
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
the U.S. affiliates, so 52 separate programs in the United States. So the 50 states plus the District of Columbia, that's not a state, and California has two programs. So 52
Got it.
affiliates and then
But
12
you
other
mentioned
Caribbean
California. So
nations.
California has some very, how should we put it, unique cybersecurity laws. State of New York has New York Shield, and again, every state has specific laws around cybersecurity guidance. But New York and California, in particular, are two of the ones that are much more daunting. I think is a fair way to put it. So how do you balance? You know, you've got all these different compliance frameworks that your organization is supposed to follow, and you said you're renting laptops, you're renting tablets, so now you have third party administration issues to consider for these. So, what's the baseline strategy to really execute this from a technology and cybersecurity standpoint for you?
So I think the most important thing is knowing the data that you're collecting and where you're storing it and how you're securing it, right? It all starts with, for us, registration data. So the delegations were all registered in a system called SO Connect that Special Olympics International provides. So it's one of their software systems they've contracted out to build. And SOI is GDPR compliant since they do business globally. And they will actually also provide the healthy athlete system that's being used to provide or capture the screening data from the health exams. So that's being done in a electronic medical record system that they're providing. But we have data, the three different registration systems. We've got lots of stuff in Smartsheet for all of our dashboards and planning. So you need to understand where the data is, what type of data it is, how you're using it, and then making sure you're being smart, right? So not emailing out spreadsheets with people's names and email addresses, providing links to documents. So we have, just like SOI, approved data systems. So we don't want people using Google Drive or something that's not corporate owned or secured to manage these types of things because that would be crazy. So yeah, it's knowing where they are, knowing the rules for engagement, and then making sure you secure access to it. So for example, we have using a volunteer management system, and we'll have about 12,000 volunteers. We need 10,000, and we're up to about 26 or 28,000 shifts, but we already know there's probably a 18 to 23% no-show rate. So we're recruiting 12,000, and we're credentialing that, just hoping that we get the people that we need actually there. But for the volunteer check-in, that's 80 of those iPads, right, across all the games properties. And what we're doing is basically customizing the vendor software so we could create a new security role that only allows people to look up a record and to check in, not to see where Mike lives, his home address, or any of the shifts that you signed up for, or any other personal information you might have provided. Like that all has to be kept confidential. So that's how we do that, right? So when the system doesn't have that capability, we pay to customize it so it can make sure that we're keeping that data safe and that volunteers aren't able to find your home address or your cell phone or be able to download that data, right? So just making sure we're very safe and careful with how the data is used, how the data is captured, and that we're following all the
So the
rules.
first thing I heard there was having sound policies and procedures and having them documented because that's going to be your blueprint. That was the first thing I heard. And then working with partners that are already benchmarked for the compliance frameworks that you like. You know, you mentioned the one has GDPR, and GDPR is arguably the most difficult one out there today. Certainly one of the more stringent ones. And just going through that chain of events, and also, and this touches on policies and procedures a little bit, but the data, what kind of data is it? Where does it belong, and how are we encrypting it? You know, like, so you can see a person's name, but you can't see their address, and you can't see their health history, and but you have all that data. So, you know, being really clear on siloing and encrypting your data in the proper warehouses. That sounds like the three legs of the chair that you just laid out for me there.
Hmm. That's pretty much exactly it. So we have a medical encounter system that it's called RaceSafe, and the doctor that founded that organization was very stringent on how data is captured, how it's stored, how it's shared, and he's running everything in the HIPAA compliant version of AWS, right? So all of that's being secured, and they're doing everything possible to make sure that the data is safe because volunteer physicians and medical staff will actually be capturing those data. So basically, someone scans my credential here. We've got a QR code that we can use for probably about half a dozen different scanning use cases now. This is encrypted. You can open up your iPhone or your Android device and try and scan this, and it won't do anything because it's encrypted data with a
Encrypted
couple, two
QR
different
codes. I
providers
like
and
it.
different strings. Yeah, everyone's like, why isn't this, why can't I scan it? I said, because it's got data. It can have data to find out me and my name and my role and some other pieces of information, and I don't want any rando to be able to do that. Now, on the back, instead of having the eye chart of 3-point font with all the terms and conditions, we made it super simple. Here's how to call 911. Here's the other on-site emergency number that we won't, oops, I shouldn't be showing that we're not going to print on all the badges. And then here's a QR code for all of the terms and conditions that go to a web page that we can update in seconds if we need to change something. And then, clearly showing what all the medical icons are. So having to be safe with how you encrypt data, how you let the right people see it, what they see. So the person that's scanning that for the medical use can actually pull up my record and quickly start recording whatever data, right? Did I just stroke out? Did I have a heat exhaustion issue? It's some other illness. Capturing it at that point, whether it's on the field or right off the field, capturing what happens. Am I transferred to an on-site medical clinic? Am I sent off to the hospital? How do we notify the hospitals that an incoming patient is on the way with the conditions and information, but still having the ability to pull up my full medical, 4-page medical that was submitted to the right people, right? So a sideline athletic trainer wouldn't necessarily see my blood pressure and my health history, but when you get to the clinic, they can see that, right? So trying to make sure that you segment the right data for the right people, really, really critical. For the health screenings and healthy athletes, the use case here is they're doing screenings on an Android tablet with an EMR system. They fire up the camera and they literally scan this little guy here, and it pre-populates me with like my name, my birth date, and my delegation, so they can quickly look me up in the system instead of going L-O-N-N. Hey, Lonnie, how's it going today? What are you competing in? Even though as an athlete, it would say I'm competing in track, right? But if you do that 8 times in one discipline, and then you're getting through 7 disciplines, that's probably 10 to 15 minutes of chit chat. That it's not a bad thing, right?
Trying to
But
be
when you're trying to
efficient,
get
sure.
12,000 exams done, you need to like move, 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 right? So if we can scan that and not have to take a couple minutes per person to find their records and start capturing the screening, then we're being efficient, we're saving time, we're being safe because this is encrypted. Only that vendor has the keys to decrypt it just to get the 3 pieces of information they need to find me to start the screening, right? So it's being smart. Just because you have data doesn't mean everyone should be able to access it or use it, right? Because then
Yeah,
bad things
that's a
happen.
bingo moment right there, Lonnie. Thank you. So, listening to all of this, something came to mind that perhaps one of the biggest challenges that you might have to deal with is doing a crash course in cybersecurity training for all of your volunteers. Because as a technology leader, for as long as you've been at it, you and I both know that one of the greatest vulnerabilities to any organization is the new person, because you don't know how savvy they are when it comes to technology. How easy is it to dupe them? And cyber. I hate using cyber terrorists, but I guess that's the right term. Somebody wants to hack this event, however they want to do it. They're probably going to look for the weakest link in the chain, and they might just decide, well, it's the volunteers that don't know enough. So, is that something that's keeping you awake at night? Have you laid out a plan to bolster the troops?
So we are doing partnering with Skillsoft and actually have some volunteers who created custom content. So every person who's a registered volunteer, when they select shifts, is automatically assigned a general volunteer training, the protective behaviors training that you probably are familiar with from your experience with Special Olympics. So the how do you work with this population? What's the right way to approach them? What's
Mm-hmm.
appropriate and not appropriate? When is it right to have a private conversation with an athlete? If you are a coach and you're helping them, what parts of the body do you not touch? Like, how do you discipline? How do you speak to people? So, sort of the Special Olympics 101. Here's the mission of the organization. Here's what we're doing. Here's information about our event. Here's how to work with this population. Here's how to be respectful. Here's how we want you to interact with and treat all of our guests, regardless of what area you're volunteering in. What's appropriate to give out, right? So you don't share phone numbers with people. You don't like go friend athletes because that's not cool. That's a little creepy. And then leaders get additional leadership training about what to do, how to manage volunteers, how to react to certain situations, how to provide feedback. People don't realize it, but you can fire volunteers. So one of the terms and conditions is you must surrender this if you're asked to. So there's a lot of safeguards in place to make sure that we're doing the right thing and teaching people how to act and behave. And then there's sport specific training as well. So everyone's getting that general training. We're having on-site orientation if you show up ahead of the games, where you'll get your credential, your T-shirt, your swag bag, and it's a breakout opportunity because in 3 weeks I'm going to be really busy and I'm not going to have a lot of time to spend with my leaders, all the volunteer leaders. So it's about 30 volunteer positions that are leaders to make sure that they've got everything. So we're doing all that with them ahead of time, right? To make sure they know how to use the systems, how to secure data, um, and just making sure the right people have access to the right things at the right time. One of this, it sounds silly, but one of the strategies with using
Mm-hmm.
iPads or Android devices is to make it harder for people to figure out how to download stuff, right? Because the iPad doesn't necessarily have a
Where you can just
desktop
save
or a
stuff. Yeah,
downloads folder.
it's a
There's
little more
files, but it's
convoluted.
kind of
Agreed.
complicated, right? So even doing things like that to make it harder to save data if you can find and figure out how to download it to then get it onto another device is all in play to try and keep our
Yeah,
events
I
safe.
want to highlight something that you said, which I heard in another interview in a non technology related forum, which is leveraging your leadership. So I got the chance to interview the president of the college that my daughter attends a couple of years ago. And one of the things he said was he couldn't possibly coach and train every member of staff. So he has about a dozen people that are his leadership team, and he refers to them as his levers. And he literally, he gets them to their maximum peak efficiency, and then he entrusts them to go and distribute that knowledge and that effectiveness, that passion to the team that he is running, the team that he or she is supporting. And it sounds to me like you've adopted a similar principle, because in an arena like this, there's literally going to be thousands of people that you're never going to actually meet, let alone talk to.
Yeah, I mean, I can't be in front of 10,000 volunteers at once. I can't help 100 people at the same time across 9 different properties. So it's not possible. So you have to set up that structure. Special Olympics International, our partners in the event, is helping. So they have a competition management system. You're probably familiar with GMS, the old games management system. SO Connect is the next wave of that. It's an online web-based platform. So harder to download data from than GMS, but it wasn't built to work offline like the old system. But they have global experts in that system because it's not possible to train someone in a few short months on how to be an expert and do level 3 support of a complex system. So we're bringing in, I think, 8 people from across the United States and 3 people internationally just to help with that, to make sure that the sports run well. And they've got years, some of them, 30 years of Special Olympics experience across multiple events. So they're sort of the tier 3 of support for our managers that we're entrusting to be leaders who are training the day of folks. So it's a very complex structure to make sure that the right people are doing the right things, right? And the right support is there. We've got a plan to move people around or to remove someone if something happens.
Yeah. So if I were to summarize what I've heard from you today, you've got a lean, mean team, very lean, but mean in a good way. You've got this group of volunteers that you are working to ramp up and prepare. You've got your partners like ESPN and Disney that are strategically helping you source things. And then you have third party vendors that you're offsetting a lot of your risk to because they've already gone through the compliance framework and they've gone through the fires and flames, as it were, to make sure that the product they're providing you meets the necessary guidelines and requirements that your organization needs to follow.
Yeah, so Fanatics is our merchandise partner. We're not selling stuff directly. We've got a shop.2022usagames.org site. It's really cool swag, better than most of the events I've been part of. But they're processing all of that, right, on our behalf, and they're doing all the PCI certifications. We still accept credit cards for some things, right? But we're not doing any of that in-house. That's all outsourced to a person or a company that's gone through all of that and is carrying the risk for us, so just like you mentioned. Yeah, so you need to know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and don't
That's a
don't
bingo
touch
moment.
the
Thank
stuff
you,
you're not
Lonnie.
good at with the 10-foot
Yeah,
pole,
and
right?
I've always said you can't be good at everything. You don't know what you don't know. You've been in your role in some form or another for a long time, and you've seen a lot. But one of the things I appreciate about working with you was you're like, hey, this is something that I know I need to do, but I don't have the time or the energy to get it done. So I can have your company do this for me and give me something concise, something digestible that I can then take action on. And that's a big part of your strategy, right?
Yeah, and so even our app platform, it's a mega project. It's a hero project for what's being done on a thin budget. But we're integrating with 8 different systems and doing a lot of stuff that hasn't really been done before. We're doing a really cool sports statistics and analytics platform that one of our partners is helping write for us. That we're sharing data for competitions. They're doing the input. We're consuming it back, and then we're superimposing it in a person's record. So if you go to our app or the website, you'll be able to see specific stats that were captured that aren't part of the competition management system, but just all integrating it together. And that's only possible by knowing who to trust. And there's a saying of trust
Trust
but
but
verify.
verify.
I think probably Peter Drucker was the guy who came up with that brilliant analogy. So I trust our app vendor completely, right? But we still use a third party to do the security and penetration testing because you never want someone who's doing something to be the person that's
Yeah.
telling you it's really going to be okay, doing the Jedi mind trick on you. So we had a third party who did standard stuff, and they ran through the whole gamut, and they said, "Can we do this in development?" I said, "Actually, I'd like you to just see if you can take over production and knock the whole thing over." And so, we built our system in a serverless environment in AWS. So we've already load tested with 25,000 concurrent users. Nothing happened. Gave us a couple of pointers about how to tweak a few small things and change the instance sizes, but that was cool. We did security and penetration tests in production. Nothing happened. They pointed it out all the things that were the Amazon load balancers and other issues. So it's just yeah, you need to know what you don't know, get the right people to help you, and then still have a third party double check them to make sure that you're not doing something silly or stupid. so you don't get caught in a bad
Awesome.
time.
Well, Lonnie, I am going to wrap up today's conversation and bring it back to the beginning, which is you and I are both fathers of children with special needs. And so this cause is very dear to my heart, as well as yours now. So it's you don't just work it, you live it, as the saying goes. So for our viewing and listening audience, if they want to contribute to the Special Olympics 2020 Games, they want to help raise funds for your organization, what's the best way for them to do that?
So if they go to our website, 2022usagames.org, they'll find ways and opportunities to donate, to volunteer, to come just support us or be part of the event. We need lots of help, lots of folks. So every dollar counts. Every dollar that I spend is a dollar that doesn't go to athletes. So we're trying to be very fiscally conservative and make sure that we're doing the right things. But you know, Jersey Mike's did a huge campaign, so awareness is at an all-time high now. But half of that money that came in went right back to the states to get everyone here, right? So athletes aren't going to pay for a penny out of their pockets for anything they do when they get here, and the money's been provided for them to get here. So every additional dollar that comes in just helps with the athlete
Wonderful. I'll
experience.
make sure to
It's pretty cool.
include that link in the show notes for people so that they can donate. Lonnie Snyder, again, Chief Information Officer of the 2022 Special Olympics USA Games. Grateful for your time today, my friend. Wonderful to see you again, and best of luck with the games.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.